Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Forestry Best Management Practice BMP virtual demonstration. I'll be Sean Hendrickson, the Assistant District Forester in the East Tennessee District, and I'll be serving as your moderator. If you have any questions or comments, anything like that, feel free to put them in the chat function. Carson Parham is a state forester on Chuck Swan State Forest. We'll monitor that chat function. So feel free to put some questions in there if you have any. So what we're going to do is we'll have about an hour and a half presentation from our water quality BMP forester, Nicholas Pietrzak, and he'll talk to you guys about the importance of BMPs and how that relates to forest management. Carson will also put a link to the survey. So after we're done with our presentation, feel free to fill that out, as well as the BMP manual that Nick will present there at the front. He'll have a QR code. But we'll also put a link in the chat to that BMP manual as well for reference as he goes through his presentation. But without further ado, we'll turn it over to Nick for this presentation. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks, Sean. Like Sean said, this is a presentation focused on landowners and kind of explaining forestry best management practices in Tennessee. Historically, the Division of Forestry for Tennessee has centered this information more for industry folks, but there's always questions from landowners calling in about neighboring properties being logged and just overall just not understanding, what's going on. So with that in mind, Sean decided to have this put together, and we are going to get started here. So like Sean said, my name is Nick Pietrzak, and I'm the water quality specialist for the Division of Forestry. The next slide here has a QR code for the BMP manual, and also at the tail end of this presentation, we've got the satisfaction survey QR code too here. So if you want to take that at the end, we'd greatly appreciate your input. So what are BMPs, or best management practices? So forestry BMPs are forest management practices developed to be practical and effective means at minimizing or overall preventing pollution in the forested waterways of the state, and to prevent further deterioration of forested land and resources during logging and other silvicultural or forest practices. So this presentation, we're going to hit the overall BMP basics. So kind of the high level, most important things to know. Some examples of them being used and also not used when they should have been, and when they should be used, where they should be used, and overall why. It's just to help y'all feel more comfortable when inquiring about having, properties harvested, or just questions overall about what's happening in surrounding properties as well. So why are they important? Well, forests play a really important role in the health of aquatic ecosystems. They act as a filter, essentially, and about 53% of Tennessee is forested, or just under 14 million acres. So quite a bit. BMPs in this state are voluntary, or basically Tennessee is a non-regulatory state. What that means is um, they're not the law. Um, they're uh, um, voluntary, not enforced by the law. However, if there are issues of pollution, then they will be enforced by the Department of Environmental Con- excuse me, Conservation, or TDEC. Um, TDEC kind of looks to us, uh, TDF, as um, interpreters, um, to explain sort of what's going on these sites. And TDF also works with Tennessee Forestry Association to help educate industry and especially loggers, um, with the Master Logger program to keep industry up to date on the most uh, environmentally friendly uh, practices. And this is part of the Tennessee Clean Water Act. And according to the Tennessee Code and Water Quality Control Act, if a logger is a master logger, then they're responsible for that site for a year after they're um, they're done harvesting on it. So it kind of behooves them to be responsible and follow these guidelines. So some data from just this previous year, we had 98% compliance on all sites that we inspected as Division of Forestry. We had 705 total inspections. Of those inspections, 32 were complaints by neighboring landowners, and 13 of those were valid or had something that actually needed to be corrected. And of those, nothing was particularly um, significant as far as risks to water quality. So y'all might be thinking, what posed the most risk, and what's the most common issues we might see over the course of a year. Um, these are those uh, improperly constructed or placed stream crossings. Sometimes you gotta cross a stream. Um, Logging debris in streams or wetlands, the discharge or spill of chemicals um, into the water, sediment from roads and trails, um, washing into the streams, and also improperly constructed roads. And the last two kind of go together. They're altering a stream channel or wetland, and then operating heavy equipment in the stream. So a word you're going to hear, a phrase you're going to hear a lot, is stream side management zone. Excuse me. or SMZ. And the SMZ, um, on page 16, if you've got the guide open, is on flat land, 25 feet on both sides of the stream, totaling 50 feet. If slope is a factor, then SMZ become wider. So with every 10% increase in slope, the SMZ will grow uh, about 20 feet. So you can see here in the illustration that it's a 10% slope on both sides. So 45 feet on both sides and totaling 90 feet. So in SMZs, there's different rules for what can be done in BMPs. So you're not allowed to totally clear cut an SMZ. Um, about 50% of the crown cover of the largest trees need to be left. We call that the dominant size class. So the trees that would typically be harvested, um, and they this essentially um, allows the stream to not um, become overheated, essentially, and also allows for uh, the flow of the stream to not increase uh, too much, just because trees along streams suck up water, and as a result of that, um, the stream flow kind of slightly depends on that the amount of trees along those streams. Here's kind of an aerial view. It's on page 15. Um, so you can see these areas adjacent to these waterways have a denser uh, tree canopy. Um, they work as a filter for sediment and other pollutants, slowing them down from entering the stream beds from harvest areas. Um, like I said, they have to modify what they're doing. No equipment like log skidders or large uh, cutting machines are permitted in SMZs to minimize uh, soil disturbance and also to um, just to ensure that chemicals that can leak from equipment like diesel and oil, hydraulic oil, don't end up there. So, like to kind of use this picture to kind of go over what's wrong, I suppose. So, in this picture, there's a road in the SMZ going to a log landing, which is an area where the kind of the heart of the harvest operation is. So lots of heavy equipment. The log loader, you can see the arm of right there, is sitting there as well. There's a lot of um, loose sediment and mud that's been washed in the stream there. There's equipment in the SMZ that's a large grapple skidder there. Um, to fix this stuff, um, you're going to need sediment control structures like straw bales or silt fencing to be installed. Um, and as well as probably seeding and strawing the disturbed areas to get some uh, vegetation growing back and limit that sediment runoff. It also appears like they're crossing the stream here at a confluence, and that's not recommended either. So this might look like a road, but it's actually a gravel bottom stream. Um, on this site, you can clearly see they were operating um, heavy equipment in the stream. They altered the stream channel. You can see the back right there, the where the tires rubbed along the edge of the stream. Heavy sedimentation. You know, this being a gravel bottom stream, there's probably 6 to 8 inches of muck there now. To fix this, they had to use shovels and buckets to dig all this out for a half-mile stretch. So, and also there was a road parallel to this that could have been utilized, but they chose not to, and that was a big mistake on their part. So, what stream types do we see um, typically in, um, you know, what when do we have an SMZ and when do we not? So, first type is a perennial stream. So, this is a stream that runs year round, probably located below a water table. So, always got water in it. Um, Lots of aquatic dependent um, veg, veg vegetation around the water, and a lot of fish present and amphibians. Very defined channel. An intermittent stream typically flows only during the wet season, and for the most part, it it might flow, all spring and then dry up in the summertime and pick up again, fall, winter. This one picture is from March, a couple years ago. So definitely the wet time of year. Might still have some moisture dependent um, plants and um, amphibians, but no fish usually. Usually, a lot of evidence of constant water velocity. And ephemeral streams or drainages, they're different. They typically flow during and just after large rain events or snow melts. May not be super well defined channel, might just be the via a hauler. Um, no real aquatic plant or animal life present. And really, these should be taken seriously when they're near a perennial stream, um, because if these get tore up, and a lot of sediment disturbance um, near a stream, and it rains, well, it's going to drain right into that uh, primary waterway and cause issues. So, still need to be taken seriously for sure. But uh, keep that in mind. Um, and typically, not a whole lot of evidence of water velocity unless it just rained. So crossing these streams, there's four typically acceptable crossing methods and tools. Bridge crossings are probably the best. Um, Generally pretty expensive though, but we do have Kosher coming up for this for industry folks. The main limitation on bridges is just the width of the channel. They got to be long enough. Need to have a quarter of the width of the stream channel uh, on both sides of the bank overhang for that bridge to be um, good to use. So if it's a 40-foot um, span to cross, then you're going to need 10 feet of overhang on the ends of the bridge uh, to be acceptable and safe to use. Um, they're very reusable. They come in steel and wood variants. Um, it's typically a lot easier to use these because the cleanup is better. You got to stabilize the banks on the stream ahead of time a bit more to use these, and as a result of that, when they're pulled out, a little bit less um, bank uh, restoration is required usually. Culverts, a lot of us are familiar with these too, but maybe not in logging sense. They're great and reusable option as well. In this picture, it probably could have used one more, but nonetheless, you can see water flowing through them, so nothing's clogged at the moment. But that is kind of the main um, issue with culverts is require a little bit more maintenance than a bridge crossing might. Um, all these have to be temporary because um, that's kind of how um, we're exempt um, as industry in the Clean Water Act. A temporary crossing does not require permits, so um, they have to be pulled out at the end of the operation. And culverts, you see all that rock and stuff in there. It might be a little bit more work to pull a culverts out versus a bridge. So keep that in mind. Also, a little bit more maintenance during use. Kind of make sure water is flowing through them fine. But as far as skid crossings, um, these are the two acceptable ones for uh, skidding logs and a perennial stream that is. So for a ephemeral drainage or a intermittent stream that's dry, this tops crossings uh, are acceptable. Um, you might see why I don't like them for a stream with water in it. Um, Essentially, you're putting um, small wood from the tops of trees and piling it in a dry creek bed or uh, ephemeral drainage to not disturb um, the bed of the stream too much. It's great for quick use on these at dry times. Um, so I always say to look at the weather if you're going to put one of these in, and make sure you got, ample time to put it in, get the have the logger get the what they need across the stream bed, come back, pull this stuff out, and do any kind of reclamation this tea is excuse me, necessary, and get back to it, I suppose. So they're cheap, they're pretty effective, but only um, practical in certain situations. So a ford crossing, um, so typically these are not used for skid trails just because um, you can't drag logs through a ford crossing. Um, they should be located where stream banks are low. It should be a solid bottom, and where necessary, establish a hard surface by using clean and not crushed gravel to establish a low water crossing. Material should not significantly impede the stream flow or release um, any kind of significant amounts of fine material into the stream. That's why we say no crushed gravel, none of that dust, and you should use large rock to armor the approaches and exits the crossing. You can see in the figure here, and do not use or relocate rock that's in the stream already. Got to use a large stone from a quarry. Um, that's different, with wetlands. You want to use things that are there already so you don't alter the chemistry of them. But with this, it's different. Um, you can see in the illustration here with the grapple skidder, how the logs are already cut to length and lifted up. That's usually not how logs are skidded, but sometimes it might happen. Ford crossings are ideal for trucks. So log trucks coming in and out. That's fine. As long as logs aren't getting dragged through the stream and bringing debris with them, it's okay. So with that, I want to talk about sensitive areas. So what is a sensitive area? Uh, it's anything from somewhere with a endangered species, maybe. Might be an area with really fragile soils. So if you remove some vegetation, there might be risk of landslide. Um, it might be areas with like wetlands. Might be areas with a lot of spring heads or karst-like areas. We'll go over that in the next slide. What that is. Um, BMPs for these areas. Um, try, try really try um, hard to not skid logs around these areas. Um, if you're hire a logger and they're doing that, it's risky for environmental reasons and for safety reasons. Um, Roads should be located outside of any sensitive areas. Runoff should be directed away from them or filtered before uh, it reaches a sensitive area. And soil exposure should be at a minimum, as well as um, ground compaction. So some definitions from that slide you might not know. A karst area is basically an area with soluble bedrock. So limestone, sandstone, gypsum, marble, anything that's really water soluble has a higher chance of containing underground drainage systems, and those erode over time and eventually um, cave openings and sinkholes and springs come up, and sinkholes are very risky and should be uh, seen as a large safety risk when in the woods. And kind of a fun one to say is fluvia karsts. Um, a lot of folks, if you spend time in the woods at all, in many different areas, you might see a stream that's flowing and then suddenly stops and then starts again farther down the system. And that's called a fluvia karst. It's where surface water goes underground, then back to the surface again. Some loggers might be tempted to cross because there's no cross in these areas because there's no water flow in there, you know. um, but you don't know how thick that rock bottom is, that stream. So you introduce heavy equipment and things like this can happen. So this was in town I live in. It's not in the woods, but this happening in the woods would be a very serious issue. Um, there was a sinkhole opened up in front of a Popeyes. They were trying to fix it for a long time. Did eventually do it, but they decided to leave this full size case excavator right next to the sinkhole. Well, the sinkhole got bigger overnight and swallowed this thing up past the tracks, and took two wreckers to pull that thing out. You could see one of them in the background, but um, nothing should be put in sinkholes. Um, they kind of have similar rules to as SMZs. So, no debris or um, chemicals should be put drained into them. No, no, um, like roads should be draining into them. No trails should be drained into them because it's groundwater, and oftentimes you're drinking water. And obviously, it's a big safety issue too. That's on page 17 of the manual. And so, like I said, it's similar to SMZs or streamside management zones, these buffer zones, 25-foot radius around any sinkhole or cave opening. Um, and for SMZ, it was 10% slope for uh, increase for sinkholes and cave openings, it's a 5% um, increase. So with every 5% increased in slope, an additional 10 feet uh, is added to that. So if it's, 5% more, then it'd be 35 feet, and so on and so forth. And like I said, divert all runoff away from sinkholes. If the lay of the land is, that's just how it is, and it's gotta flow that way, then you can, loggers can put in sort of filter systems like staked straw bales uh, in front of where water's draining from roads, and that kind of filters the sediment. Um, if runoff enters a sinkhole and affects groundwater, and BMPs weren't being followed, a underground injection control or UIC permit may be required by TDEC. I put the phone number there for that for TDEC. Um, it's um, generally if BMPs are being followed and a harvest site is flooded and it enters a cave, um, that's considered an act of God by TDEC, and they don't require a UIC. But if that happens and BMPs weren't followed at all, then you're probably gonna need one of those permits. So always good to follow the rules just in case. So some uh, conclusions for stream crossings and sensitive areas. So all crossings are supposed to be temporary unless an um, ARAP permit is obtained for TDEC. Um, you might really want a permanent crossing on your property, and that logger might have the equipment and means to build it for you, and that's fine. Just got to get a permit. Um, all crossings should be excuse me, perpendicular to the stream. So cross at a 90-degree angle. No crossing near uh, where two streams join. Um, no crossing on um, a bend in the stream. Should be straight sections only. Um, Once removed, all crossings should be properly reclaimed to prevent erosion and sedimentation. It might be more work depending on the crossing method. Like I went over, bridges typically a little bit less impactful than a culvert or tops crossing. Crossing streams should be avoided unless completely necessary. And all this stuff should be thought out ahead of time. Should have a pre-harvest plan where uh, all the crossings and roads should be laid out. We'll go over that more with roads a little bit later, but really only cross if you really have to, because it's more work and risk uh, involved with crossings. And if you or your logger have any concerns, you can always contact your local area forester office, and they can come out and help with that pre-harvest plan. If it, when I was an area forester, I did it a lot, um, multiple times a year, and it was always interesting and good experience. And also, if something arises, like a flood or something, and TDEC comes looking, uh, you know, were involved on the front end. Um, Crossings should be laid out in the harvest plan and along with the roads. So some best management practices for debris in streams. Do not fell trees in or across streams. Um, I know accidents happen. You know, you have to do some hand felling um, in SMZs anyway because cutting machines aren't allowed. So I understand uh, human error sometimes. It's not a big deal. Just pull the tree out, uh, the stream, and clean up debris, and no problems. Um, do not pile slash too close to waterways. So sometimes loggers will pile slash up to slow down water velocity on uh, skid trails approaching a crossing when they're done with it. And if it's too close and a flood happens, say, uh, the water can rise up and take that debris into the stream and cause damming issues. So it's good to do, but do it outside of the SMZ. Don't drag tops or logs through streams. So, like I said in the forward slide, um, do not skid logs through streams. Don't drag them through streams. It's going to bring sediment and woody debris and deposit it into the stream. So should be avoided. Uh, and then do not remove stumps and roots and trees from stream banks because that's holding the bank together and it's going to cause issues with erosion for sure. So should be avoided at all costs. So we get a little bit of participation here in the chat, maybe. Um, it's what's wrong in this picture.
Folks, don't be shy. Put what you
Come
think's
on.
wrong here based on what we got here. Bad
So
or
I know some
pretty.
folks came in later, but there's definitely overcutting in the SMZ for sure. Yeah, Hannah. Not just a top in the water, a whole tree in the water that has clearly been there for a minute. Um, so hey, an accident happened. Don't leave it there. This is just one picture of a long stretch of a riverbank that had many trees just sitting like this. So they they also ran equipment along the stream bank as well. Um, and as far as fixing these issues, obviously pull the trees out of the water. Um, and then we recommended planting some seedlings of uh, tree species that would be found there normally, like sycamore, uh, some sweet gum, things like that, bottomland hardwoods, basically, to uh, re-stabilize that bank. But overall, um, fixable. Probably going to have to, with all that exposed soil from running equipment, um, that they had to install some straw bales and some silt fencing, but overall it's fixable. It just takes time. Everything with forestry just takes time. So this is unfortunately somewhat common. Um, you know, it's it kind of leaves forestry BMPs and enters, you know, breaking the law. Uh, Littering and trashing someone's property is considered vandalism. So, and also just morally not right. You're working on someone's property, you know. Uh, say you hire someone to remodel your bathroom, and they leave uh, empty soda cans and lunch trash all over your house. That's not nice. Um, Here in the picture, they left a pile of uh, um, buckets of empty buckets of hydraulic oil, jugs of chainsaw bar oil, two-stroke gas cans were crushed. Um, so chemical issues for sure. Um, a good thing to do is make sure that in the contract it says all trash must be picked up. So that's all I'm gonna say on that. It seems like common sense, but I see it way too often to not say something. So roads, I mentioned this before, but all roads and skid trails should be mapped out. Main skid trails. Sometimes things pop up and a skidder goes down and for a day uses one little strip, but all main skid trails and haul roads, temporary and permanent, should be planned out in a pre-harvest plan. Um, if roads exist from a harvest 40 years ago, by all means use them. Um, Probably going to need some dozer work, but if they're there, use them. No new roads should be installed within streamside management zones. However, um, if an old road kind of just cuts into barely into an SMZ, and it's going to be more sediment if you build sedimentation uh, arising if you build a whole new road, 5 feet up from there, then you can use the old one. That's fine. But if you have questions about that, you can always contact you and your logger can just call a local area forester and come out and say yay or nay on that. Once done, make sure all trails and roads are closed off properly and have proper erosion control methods taken. Um, some examples would be water bars of dirt or slash, and some broad-based dips should be installed. Some examples of those coming up here. So for a road that the landowner is probably going to want to use again, it might open up when you leave, when a logger leaves. Um, a broad-based dip is probably the better option, because water bars are essentially big roadblocks, and you're going to want to drive through that road. So a dip is kind of the opposite. It's a little dip in the road. I put it at a slight angle um, on outsloped roads. So a road put in about 2 to 3% uh, slope, excuse me, just to allow water to flow properly and not pool up. Um, It's good to vary the road grade to reduce concentrated water flow in drainage ditches and culverts. Um, Typically, cross drain culvert cross drain culverts probably won't be put in on a property that the logger doesn't own, but dips probably. So um, when a road is located on a flat surface, it should be crowned. So little hump in the middle and allows water to flow off the road properly and not pool. Roads should be outsloped 2 to 4% when the gradient is less than 10%. Um, Loggers should inslope roads 2 to 4% on really steep slopes and sharp turns, just so that um, equipment's not sliding off the road. It's a safety issue there. Um, Turnouts should be installed. Some people call these wing ditches. They're basically drainage outlets for water to flow off a road. Um, and but they're pretty important. Uh, Oftentimes, if we want to filter the water runoff, you can put stakes and straw bales um, at the ends of these turnouts. That's often helpful, especially if it's a ephemeral drainage that might go into a large stream or something nearby. Might be important to do for that logger. So, like I said, once these roads are done, you can see here um, a real water bar right here. I know it's kind of hard to see um, with this picture. Just didn't upload to PowerPoint very nicely, but you can see it's put in at a good angle. Um, Water can flow right here and be diverted off the road. You can see why this might not be good for a road that's going to be used by the landowner afterwards. It's a um, big hump, big speed bump. That's on page 10. So I mentioned earlier, um, seeding and strawing approaches and using uh, slash bars to slow down water velocity. So here's an example of that. Um, you can see the slash bar up here. You can see the seed, or you see the straw and the seed right here. Um, Something to keep in mind with this is nutrient pollution. So a lot of uh, grass seed you buy these days is coated with a fertilizer, and if that coated seed gets in a in a stream, it can have negative consequences um, as far as uh, you know chemical pollution, basically. So a lot of times, like the cheaper contract grade seed uh, isn't coated, but it's good to check. Um, and because you know some of it's going to get washed into the stream, and just want to avoid any risk with that. Here's a properly closed off and blocked skid trail. So it's probably like 3.5 foot berm right here with stumps in the middle of it. There's a stump over here, a stump over here on the left too. You can also see on the skid trail behind here, it's outsloped, and there's a water bar just over the crest of the hill. Um, no water bars are needed up here because it's it's just not steep enough, but good to block it off. Neighbors on four-wheelers like to poke around sometimes, and it's good to. I always tell loggers to document the use of BMPs, and for landowners as well. If you know you got neighbors that like to poke around, it might be good to document things. Here's an example of a turnout. This was a road they reused um, and fixed up a bit. Um, this turnout, another grainy picture, but uh, it it does flow downhill pretty well. Um, the first time I was out there, they actually uh, the turnout was above the road. Had a big berm right here, um, and we said, "Hey, got to fix that." Came back 2 days later. It was all good. And if there's issues with say if there was a sinkhole down here and the way the land is, the water's going to flow downhill no matter what. Straw bales could be put in at the end of this turnout along with some slash to help filter that sediment out of the water sooner. Here's a slash bar on that same logging site. Harder, another grainy picture, but um, it's put in at an angle properly. You can see that they really ran out of soil here. I did have them put in some. I did have them push up some finer debris. Oops, sorry. And what soil they could get at the base of this slash bar, just to divert the water properly. But it's a when there's not much soil left to work with, these slash bars really are uh, sort of the best option. Here's a place where uh, nothing was done. There's no turnouts, there's no water bars of any kind, no slash bars or dirt bars, no dips, no nothing really. Right across the road from this was the Duck River, and it's a very ecologically diverse river, um, and environmentally important. And they didn't do anything to control any erosion or runoff. So if anyone wants to say in the chat, what they think could have been done and what needs to be done to fix this.
Am I heard?
Yes.
Okay, I'm new to this business. It appears to me in this picture that there's branches or sticks or something up there on the upper right corner
Yes.
that could have been drug out into that area to do that, what you just described, that slash stuff with the branches. That could have been better than nothing.
Yeah, like you say, the materials to do so are literally right next to it. So it really was no excuse. And they had to come back off the next job site that they'd already started and, fix this stuff. So it's something that loggers, should do on the front end because they're going to lose money in the long run if they don't. And forestry is a long run game.
Yeah. I do have one other comment. It's
Sure.
about the subject that you went in just before this,
Sure.
where trees were falling into the river, the Pigeon Rivers and things.
Yes.
With all this cleanup going on along, in my particular case, the Pigeon, will there, and it looks a whole lot better than it did, but are they going to put any kind of new tree plantings or anything in there? Are you aware of any that they might be doing?
I'm not
Yes.
direct.
So Nick, this is
Yeah.
related to the Hurricane Helene
Oh,
damage
okay.
with the flooding and stuff. So FEMA's coming in and doing a lot of removing some of
federal
that
stuff.
trees that fell down, and it's like what Don's saying. It's opened up a lot of open ground, topsoil and stuff, so to speak. What I would expect is they're doing a lot of mulching with those trees that they're removing.
They
And I
are
would
doing
expect
that.
they would probably take that mulch and put the mulch down over the top of that exposed soil
Yeah.
once they
Okay.
get all the timber removed. And that's what I believe the plan will be. They're still removing trees and debris, but that's what I expect will probably happen.
Yeah, that makes sense because there's big giant piles of chipped stuff there where they're collecting the wood. So that makes sense. Thank you.
I could see long term there being riparian projects where trees might be replanted, possibly, just because that seed bank from all that flooding was definitely disturbed. Yeah, Sean?
I was going to say they are having a Arbor Day celebration there in Newport. They're near the Pigeon River, and Ashley Kite Rowland is a community uh, coordinator in relation to like urban restoration projects, and she's actually going to be talking there to landowners about some restoration options for landowners that have property adjoining the Pigeon River to possibly plant different, native plants or shrubs or trees to kind of help revegetate those areas. So that's an option as well.
Good stuff. Thanks for the input.
Yeah.
So you might be thinking after all this, who's liable in certain situations? In short, whoever does it is responsible. Whoever goes against the rules would be who's responsible. So if the logger puts in water bars and closes off roads properly and has good turnouts put in and leaves the site and before he leaves takes pictures, then the landowner comes in and says, well, I really want to use that road. I know I told him I didn't, but I really want to use that trail. So they knock all the water bars down and start using it, say in July. And then come late September, early October, we get a bunch of rain and those roads wash out real bad and they cause a lot of sedimentation issues in, say, a trout stream that's just downhill from said roads and trails. And neighboring landowners complain. Well, uh, say we inspected that site, we know who logged it. I call them on the phone and say, hey, did you put in, necessary best management practices on this site? And they say yes, and they email me pictures. Then TDEC's going to be going after the landowner to fix these issues. So it's going to come out of their pocket. So communication is key with this stuff, generally pretty avoidable. If the logger, doesn't um, doesn't follow these practices, then it's on them. So it's kind of, kind of kind of what you think it'd be, I suppose. Um, and as far as consequences go for things like this, there's a couple different things. Um, there's a lot of grace given uh, before anything real happens. We're the first people on site, Tennessee Division of Forestry. Uh, we're the first on scene, generally speaking, and we will make recommendations, and usually they're pretty reasonable, and usually they're we're listened to, and things get fixed, and there's no big issues. However, some loggers are can be stubborn, and maybe they're not uh, wanting to follow the rules, and they just kind of want to keep production up, and they just ignore us and say, "I'll just do it later." And we feel the need to contact TDEC and get them involved. Um, and then TDEC comes in and they say, "Hey, you were asked to do this, please do it." And they might have additional things, that they want done on top of what we said initially. And if that's still not listened to, then a notice of violation, or an NOV, is put in place. Along with that, usually comes a fine, a daily fine, um, until said issue is fixed. That can be, depending on severity, anywhere from $500 to $10,000 a day. Um, that's pretty hefty. So, you know, usually everything's hunky dory, and uh, rules are followed, and uh, everyone's happy at the end of the day. But if issues persist, uh, something called a stop work order is possible. It's not super common because it's for extreme circumstances, but it's there. Um, it's really if everyone's just refusing to fix any issues, they're putting everything off, they're blowing us off. Um, in that case, TDEC um, uh, can bring the law in if necessary to forcibly stop the operation. And then a plan is put in place, and we periodically check in to make sure that the plan's being followed and progress is being made at an appropriate rate, uh, fair rate. Don't expect superhuman speed at at things, um, but um, mention a plan called a CAP plan. Usually it's uh, written, depending on severity. If it's really bad, sometimes a civil engineering firm has to be hired to write it. In that instance, with that that stream that was used as a road, I go back and use that picture in a minute. But in that instance, uh, a CAP plan was put in place. They had to dig out all the uh, muck and mud and debris with shovels and buckets. They had to hire extra hands to do so. They had to put in place silt fencing, straw bales, straw wattles, which are kind of like long tubes of straw staked down uh, along the banks to filter runoff and and control erosion. And then we checked on them periodically and had formal sit down meetings on site. I think 3 or 4 of them. And then when things were done, uh, everything was hunky dory, and they ended up not getting a stop work order because they followed the plan and actually finally started to listen to us. And that was a relief. Uh, because that's really all we want. In the end, is for these things to be fixed. And it, you know, they still had to pay a lot of money for these engineers to come out and lost a lot of money on production because they couldn't work anywhere else at this time, and the mill ended up just overall deciding not to harvest on that site anymore. Um, it's also something to think about is on that site there was the absentee landowner. So if you're an absentee landowner, you don't live on site. Maybe you live in another part of the state and you're not there to see things every day, or don't live down the road to just drive by and check on things. It might kind of behoove you to know your neighbors, I suppose, and maybe have someone uh, that lives nearby check on things once in a while. Um, if it's a bigger job, we recommend getting a consulting forester to bid off your timber uh, for you. And in that case, uh, when someone bids on it, gets it, um, the consulting forester will be checking on the job, and the ideally the procurement forester who bought that timber for the sawmill will be checking as well. But it's still good to know what's going on um, from neighbors and such as well. Besides all that, um, there needs to be a basic refusal to follow BMPs. Um, a point source discharge has been created because of a refusal to use BMPs, and waters of the state have been polluted due to these forestry activities. So a lot has to happen, but it's pretty serious. Once a stop work order is officially put in place, that logger, and depending on their responsibility in this situation, sometimes the sawmill, they'll go after them as well. Uh, will need to get permission from the Commissioner of Agriculture and the Commissioner of TDEC to start a new job. That's pretty serious. That's my boss's boss's boss, and then uh, uh, the Commissioner of TDEC as well has to approve them starting every new job site in the state of Tennessee for 2 years. So it essentially slows their business down to uh, a slow crawl. So it's very serious. It's got lasting implications. Um, it's a small industry. Everybody kind of knows one another once you're in it long enough. So if a logger has that happen, it's everyone knows. And it's also a big reason to, as a landowner, if it's a small tract and there's not enough for a consulting forester to, make his percentage as well. Say it's 10, 12 acres of average timber, only maybe 1,800 feet to the acre of wood. It's in that case, you might need to deal directly with a logger, and in that in that case, recommend going for the master logger. Like I mentioned beginning, um, the master loggers a list. Tennessee Forestry Association has it on their website. I believe we have it on our website somewhere. And that's a good starting off point for you. And also um, getting references from each of them helps as well. Just and overall, kind of the high points here to remember what BMPs are. So, forest management practices developed as practical and effective means to minimize or prevent pollution of waters of the state. Remember what an SMZ is, or stream side management zone, especially if you've got one on a stream on your property or your properties adjacent to one, because that's going to be something to possibly deal with. You might not have to cross it at all, but you still might need to, have that. Still going to need to have that limited zone harvesting. And make sure all roads and crossings, if they're necessary, should be planned out in a pre-harvest plan. TDF field staff, they're all there to help. Please make contact with your local area office. If you want a hard copy of the BMP manual, not just the one on the internet here, not just the PDF that we provide, but a hard copy. All the field offices should have some. Be mindful of sensitive areas like karsts, caves, sinkholes. Remember, a karst area is an area with a lot of soluble bedrock. So limestone, sandstone, areas like that. I know there's a lot of that out east. And then remember that, we're TDF staff, we're the subject matter experts when it comes to this stuff. And TDEC looks to us for guidance in these situations. So if you bring us in with the logger that's been hired and the forester that's been hired, just to be safe and say, hey, we want to put a crossing in here. What do y'all think? Before everything starts, that can make things a lot easier on the tail end, especially if TDEC sees things before us during the harvest. So with that, here's my name, Nick Petrus Zach here, and my contact info. Any questions?
Awesome. Great job, Nick, presenting that. A lot of information to absorb there, folks. So if you have any questions, I believe at the back of that BMP manual that you get a hard copy of, or the electronic copy in the chat, there's a field office numbers in the back for your respective counties.
Yeah, there should be a map.
Yeah, and a map to kind of show where your area is, that you can follow up with any other questions that you may have had that didn't think of during the presentation. So I encourage y'all to take a picture of that QR code, or if you look up in the chat, we also have a link that Carson put there for you guys, to the post presentation survey and the BMP guide electronic copy. Does anybody have any questions before we stop the recording?
You can take my contact info down there if you think of something afterwards. Don't hesitate.
Well, thank you. Yeah, don't hesitate to call Nick. We'll send this recording out to folks that wasn't able to make it on the call on the presentation due to Arbor Day celebration. So happy Arbor Day to folks today, and get out there and plant a tree and do some stream restoration. And everybody stay safe out there. So with that, we'll appreciate everybody joining.
Thank you.
Thank you for presenting that.
No problem, sir. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Still, Nick, great job.
Thanks. Sorry, I started a little bit in the beginning there.
It's all right. You got through it. So we'll make that recording available to landowners and area foresters. I think it was good information for folks that couldn't make it on. But great job.
I'll put this on the front of my SharePoint today too. Just have the hard copy.
Okay, good deal.
See y'all later.
Good. All right, we'll see you, Nick. See you, everyone.